Hopefully, one far away from war.
Hey, welcome back to Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all the Easter eggs, references, and little things that you might have missed in episode 6 of the Bad Batch Tribe. But first off, I owe everybody an apology about last week's video. I had a lot of fun speculating on who built the giant mecha monster. I ended up throwing out a couple theories that were a lot of fun. One, that it was an ancient weapon from the ancient Sith Jedi War 7,000 years ago. Yoda confirmed there were super weapons like that way back then.
Long ago, in forgotten times, when the Sith and Jedi fought for control of the galaxy, weapons there were of unimaginable power.
And Darth Maul even found one of these super weapons on Malachor.
My apprentice is activating the temple, or more precisely, this battle station.
And the way the laser charged up even reminded me of the Death Star's super laser. I also theorized that this could have been a weapon created by a race of ancient Force users called the Bendu, who we met in Rebels. But there's a way more obvious creator of this weapon. Your mom? No, but good one. High five. I think this was probably created by the Zeffo, an ancient race of Force users that were in the game Jedi Fallen Order. The Zeffo kind of look like the monster, and they were around before the Republic like Fiji Noah says.
These etchings are easily 1,000 years old. Older.
Their temples are also filled with puzzles like this one that we saw in the Bad Batch, and mostly the written language appears to be the same. Now, one particular thing that I noticed here, if you look close,
Smells like an angel had a baby with a flower, and then they made cookies together.
why thank you, that's me.
Nah, you never smell this good. You smell like skin and pizza.
Well, that's because now I am wearing cologne.
But cologne, it's so confusing with all them fancy names. How do you even know what to buy?
Actually, I have no idea what to buy, so I subscribe to Scentbird. They're the sponsor of this video. Now, this is actually a great service for a guy like me because I have no idea what makes for a good cologne. And cologne is expensive, and I don't want to drop a lot of money on some pricey bottle. But Scentbird is a fragrance subscription service that lets you skip any month without penalties. If you're new to wearing cologne, it's a great way to start. This month, I received Wildfire by Raw Spirit. Now, to educate me about the cologne, they send along these descriptive cards that explain the ingredients and the proper occasion to wear this fragrance.
So you can both smell better and become a fancy lad.
Exactly. So my favorite fragrance this month is called Vetiver and Oak by Sense of Wood. And as you can see, it's 8 times bigger than a normal sample size that you get at the store. It's really nice. It's got hints of pink pepper, coriander, and cypress. It says so here on the card.
Well, how does it work?
Well, Doug, you can choose a designer fragrance every month for just $17. You get a 30-day supply, and you get to pick what you want to receive, so there are no surprises. This is a great way to both learn about cologne, find out what you like, without spending hundreds of dollars on a bottle. So if you want to give Scentbird a try, use our code ScreenCrush55 and click the link in the description to get 55% off. That's just over $7 for your first month, available in the US and Canada. Thanks again to Scentbird for sponsoring us, and check out our sample links below.
You really do smell good.
Thanks, buddy. High five. The title Tribe has a double meaning. First, obviously, it refers to the former Padawan Gungi searching for his lost tribe on Kaskyyk. He left the planet at a young age to join a new tribe, the Jedi Order. In fact, when we first met him in the Clone Wars, Huyang even points out how rare and honorable it is for a Wookiee to be a Jedi.
Rare you are to the Jedi. Proud your people must be.
But now that his Jedi tribe is gone, he's searching to return to his original people. But the other meaning refers to the Bad Batch themselves. They immediately see that they need the help of Gungi and the Wookiees because they have been allies in the past. They essentially accept the former Padawan as one of their own to make sure that he becomes safe.
We came because Gungi was in trouble.
Now, the episode begins on Vanguard Access, a smuggling port that is apparently run by these Axis droids. At first, I thought this was weird, that droids would be running their own smuggling operation, and that they weren't, like, being programmed by someone else. But actually, it fits in with what we've seen all throughout Star Wars. Assassin droids like IGs 11 and 88 are independent, but take on contracting jobs. When Luke removed the restraining bolts from R2-D2 and C-3PO, the two droids were free to leave if they wanted to. But Star Wars has this, like, really weird thing with droids where they aren't quite servants, but they're sort of like pets. They seem to have feelings, but Obi-Wan says,
well, if droids could think, there'd be none of us here, would there?
So I don't even want to think about Lando's relationship to L3.
How would that work?
It works.
Anyways, Pop Culture Detective has a great video about this. It's very disturbing, you should watch it, but I'll move on. The Bad Batch are selling the droids counterfeit Imperial chain codes like we first saw way back in episode 2.
You think you can forge some chain codes? I only learned of them moments ago, but yes.
I created these chain codes myself. They will fool the Empire.
These are basically Imperial security numbers that can allow criminals or rebels to get past Imperial blockades, like Luthen's fake transponder in Andor.
ID confirmed, sir. Alderaan Trade Alliance.
I thought it was funny that the box they're in actually kind of looks like the container for a Ratchet set. Like if the show were live action, this is the kind of prop the art department might cobble together for them to use. Then Omega says,
Something off about this place.
And what she's sensing is that Gungi is on the station and in trouble.
Hey, so what's going on? Is she like force sensitive? Is she gonna be a Jedi or something?
You know, man, I'm like 90% sure that she's going to turn out to be force sensitive. Like, even in the first couple episodes of the show, she seems to have an intuitive understanding of Crosshair's feelings. And the Kaminoans really wanted her DNA back. They said this was because that she was the last unaltered clone of Jango Fett, so they could use her DNA to make even better clone troopers. But I kind of think they were trying to implant midi-chlorians into clones to create an army of their own Jedi Knights. Also, Omega is technically a member of the Bad Batch. She is an alter clone with something designed in her DNA to make her different and special.
You're my brother too.
Since the other members of the Bad Batch have their own special powers, I kind of think Omega's is that she's force sensitive. Now, this would eventually make Omega instrumental in the entire saga because, as we know, Palpatine was trying to create a force sensitive clone of himself. You see, all of Star Wars now, outside the High Republic, is just scrambling to justify this.
Somehow.
Anyways, if Omega is force sensitive, that would explain why she senses Gungi. I think that she was detecting a disturbance in the Force. The droids have captured Gungi, probably not realizing that he is a former Jedi. It makes sense that they would traffic in slaves for a few reasons. For one, droids are used to seeing their own kind bought and sold, so they would treat organics the same way. And two, slavery was very prevalent under the Empire, and actually under the Republic as well. The Empire wanted to build massive war machines like the Death Star, so they enslaved Wookiees by the millions to be part of their workforce. Now, this is why Chewbacca was an Imperial prisoner when he met Han. And I also want to recommend a great non-canon novel called The Dark Lords of the Sith about the conquest of Kaskyyk and one of Darth Vader's earliest missions. Great read.
You keep saying Gungi like you know him. Who is that guy? You guys friends or something?
Oh man, Gungi is from one of my all-time favorite Clone Wars arcs. It's about a group of younglings getting their lightsabers. So, like when the Jedi are real young kids, they're taught in these group classes by Yoda. And then Yoda takes them to a planet called Ilum, which is filled with kyber crystals, and each youngling has to go through a trial to obtain their crystal. And then they construct their new lightsabers. Gungi's was very unusual. He chose a sturdy wood, which is fitting for a Wookiee. And then Gungi and the other Padawans are captured by pirates, taken to Hondo Anaka. Ahsoka's trying to help these Jedi kids escape, and eventually Grievous shows up. It's a great story, and every episode is like out of the frying pan, into the fire kind of danger. Now, typically, after a youngling has their lightsaber, they're chosen by a master to become an apprentice. Now, I don't think that Gungi ever became a full-fledged Padawan. The last time we saw him was after the Jedi Temple, here, when he's standing with Tera Sinube. Like Yoda, Tera Sinube was kind of a Jedi elder statesman who taught group classes, so it's unlikely that he was Gungi's master. It could also be that the Clone Wars killed off so many Jedi that there weren't enough masters to go around for all the young Padawans. Gungi also isn't the only Wookiee Jedi that we know of. In the High Republic books, one of my favorite Padawans is a Wookiee named Burryaga Agaberry, or Burry for short. So Gungi has been on his own since Order 66, trying to get back to his family on Kashyyyk. No wonder he's afraid when he sees Echo. He thinks he's just another clone trooper programmed to kill him. Also, notice that his trademark tooth on his bottom jaw is still there. It's just that now it's a little bit longer because he's a little bit longer in the tooth.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Thanks, man. After a quick fight, Omega earns his affection by feeding him, because the fastest way to a Wookiee's heart is through their enormous stomach, like Han said.
Great. Always thinking with your stomach.
Now, the Bad Batch mentioned that they have been on Kashyyyk before.
Been a while since we've been to Kashyyyk.
And that they are friends to the Wookiees.
The Wookiees were our allies for years.
So let me give you a little background on this planet, and I'll give you an idea of what the Bad Batch were doing there in the past. So Kashyyyk has this weird history in Star Wars, because the first time we saw it was in the Star Wars Holiday Special. The whole plot of that special is that Han is trying to get Chewbacca home to his family for Life Day. It's real weird. There are several minutes like this. And it's just like that. It's just like 10 minutes straight of just Wookiee speak at each other with no subtitles.
I cannot understand a single word you're saying.
The holiday special was so bad that George Lucas tried to destroy every copy. Here's Harrison Ford being reminded of the experience.
You have no memory of this incident.
No, none whatsoever.
No memory of it at all.
And yet, the holiday special has been kind of preserved in the new canon. Life Day was mentioned in The Mandalorian.
I was hoping to be free for Life Day.
Young Din Djarin was rescued while wearing Life Day robes, and Boba Fett first appeared in this special. And in this episode, we see that the Wookiee treehouses are basically lifted straight from the art of that special. And Kashyyyk was almost in Return of the Jedi instead of Endor.
Oh man, an army of Wookiees fighting the Death Star? That would have been awesome.
Yeah, it would have been. In fact, that's what this South Park joke is all about.
Chewbacca is a Wookiee from the planet Kaskyyk, but Chewbacca lives on the planet Endor. Now think about that. That does not make sense.
But Lucas decided that since Chewbacca was aware of advanced technology, that the Wookiees wouldn't be right to fight off the Empire. He wanted a species with no technology at all, and also that looked like teddy bears so he can make a lot of money.
Merchandising! Merchandising!
It explains why there were 2 Ewok TV movies and an animated series. Anyways, Kashyyyk is located in the mid-rim, which makes it an important galactic hub to the outer rim.
It's the Sokovia of Star Wars.
Sokovia's had a rough history. It's nowhere special, but it's on the way to everywhere special.
Kinda, yeah. In the final days of the Clone Wars, the Separatists were mostly beaten back to the Outer Rim. They tried to conquer Kashyyyk because it would have been a gateway into breaking through into the core systems. The Wookiees were also old enemies with the Trade Federation who tried to conquer Kashyyyk like 20 years before that, kind of like what they ended up doing to Naboo. Anyways, we've all seen Revenge of the Sith. Yoda leads the forces on Kashyyyk when Order 66 happens, and then a chieftain named Tarful and Chewbacca help Yoda escape. Afterwards, the Republic would continue to occupy the planet as it became the Empire and enslave the population. Now, this actually happened a lot after the Clone Wars. Ryloth was forced into the Empire, and in the Darth Vader comics, we see the Empire conquering Mon Cala after they fought the Separatists during the Clone Wars. In fact, Kashyyyk would stay under Imperial control until well after Return of the Jedi, when Han and Chewbacca liberated the planet in the Aftermath novels. And also, Chewie lived there with his family for years before leaving to run around with Han again just before The Force Awakens. So this episode is showing us a very dark time in the history of Kashyyyk, when the Empire was burning the planet and enslaving the the Wookiees. And I just have to shout out Kevin Kiner's score in this episode. I mean, every episode of the series is dipping into a different genre, and here he's given the planet this awesome tribal sound, which really adds to the adventure of the week feel of the series here in Season 2. Luckily, Hunter speaks the Wookiee language Shiriwook.
My Wookiee's a little rusty, but I think he says his name is Gungi.
And you know, Wookiees never have subtitles. Like, they always have an interpreter. In fact, I bet if they did have subtitles, it would just be like this.
All right, don't lose your temper.
Now, first the Bad Batch is attacked by these spider-like creatures called the Kinrath. They first appeared in the Old Republic video game. However, these spiders were not repurposed for the Kashyyyk mission in that wonderful game, Jedi Fallen Order. Gungi used the Force to speak with them, and I'm wondering if this is his particular skill with the Force. Like some Jedi are a little more specialized. Avar Kriss in the High Republic was able to link different minds of the Jedi, and Ezra Bridger and Gungi are able to speak to animals, and Cal Kestis, from that great game Jedi Fallen Order, was able to sense Force echoes. But back to the spiders. The first place they were going to appear in canon was actually supposed to be a Clone Wars episode, and that episode is really the prequel to this one. So in 2015, when Disney bought Star Wars, they canceled the Clone Wars series and all of these half-finished episodes were scrapped. Many of them were repurposed into comics, novels, or eventually made for Season 7. One of them was about Yoda meeting the Bad Batch on Kashyyyk and fighting off the Trandoshans, like we see in this episode. So this is the mission that Hunter references in this episode. One cool detail is that Yoda's personal troopers would have painted his face on their masks, which Ahsoka's platoon of the 501st ended up doing in the final Clone Wars arc. Now, this Kashyyyk arc would have introduced a lot of elements that we see in this episode. The Trandoshans would be working with the Separatists, and their commander was Bobwa Venomore, the villain in this episode. In order to defeat the Separatists, the Wookiees have to burn part of the forest. So Tarful prayed to the trees for permission to burn part of the forest.
Burn it all!
And by the way, all of these ideas and the spiritual connection to the forest came straight from George Lucas. So the forest sends these giant monkeys for the Wookiees to ride. And in this episode, they're kind of just repurposed to be kind of like Wookiee horses. Other elements from this series have been retained, like when Gungi and Omega pray to the trees. Maybe this is another hint that Omega is force sensitive and can speak to the forest like a Wookiee. So that story has been slightly repurposed for this episode, except the Trandoshans are aligned with the Empire. Now, Trandoshans typically do not get along with Wookiees. Their homeworlds are very close to one another, and the Trandoshans hunt Wookiees and wear their pelts, like this one's doing.
100 Wookiee pelts to whoever finds the Jedi.
That's also why Chrysanthemum attacked this Trandoshan in the bar in the Book of Boba Fett. Now, the stones that they are destroying are a new version of the trees that the Wookiees prayed to in that untold Clone Wars story. Now, the worship of stones is a very ancient native custom. For instance, when Native Americans create a sweat lodge, they add stones onto the fire saying, "Thank you, grandfather," because the stones are the oldest things on Earth, hence grandfather. Now, another neat detail, notice how these Imperial tanks are actually old repurposed Separatist tanks, kind of like how this episode is repurposed from a Clone Wars arc.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
After Darth Vader ordered all the droids to shut down at the end of Revenge of the Sith, the Separatist vehicles were still laying around. And since the Empire is currently funneling all its new resources into projects like building big capital ships and building the Death Star, it makes sense that they would repurpose any old material that they could find. Later, they're found by a tribe of Wookiees riding these ape lizards, and they're all carrying bowcasters like Chewbacca's.
I like this thing.
Now, this Wookiee they rescued, I think, is a new character. The most famous Wookiee after Chewbacca is the Chieftain Tarful from Revenge of the Sith. This Wookiee does not have the same breastplate, though his pauldron does match the design on this guy's chest, so maybe they're part of the same tribe. Then we get into this horrific late-night jungle battle, which actually harkens back to the roots of the Wookiees. Now, like I said, Lucas originally wanted the Wookiees to be the primitive species in Return of the Jedi, and the Battle of Endor was supposed to be analogous to the Viet Cong fighting American troops in the jungle, showing that a less equipped force of natives could overcome a more technologically advanced foe. And we're seeing Vietnam imagery in this episode. The dark jungle, the flamethrowers, even the guy screaming as he gets pulled in by the spider is calling to mind the horrors of that war. In fact, I love that Gungi doesn't win by fighting, but by using the life of the forest as his ally. That's some real Force stuff right there. And I also want to mention that the Imperial troopers in this episode are still clones. I think there's going to be some kind of dramatic moment in this series when the Empire disposes of most of its clone forces because, so far, the transition to conscripts is very slow. My theory is that at some point there's going to be a massive clone uprising that makes the Empire get rid of most of their clone troopers. Now, there is one really silly part of this episode that makes me think that something was deleted. This clip.
The fire! It's spreading too fast!
Tech, gather all the Wookiees.
Like, was there originally going to be a larger fire? Or did they just want to make sure that everybody knew why the fire didn't spread? It's a very awkward cut. But I did like this emotional button of the episode.
They're both just kids. But they don't get to be.
Hunter brought this up in episode 1. He wanted to find Dooku's treasure specifically so he could pay for a home where Omega could have a normal life. There's no telling where the Bad Batch's story ends up, but we know that none of them can ever truly find peace. They're soldiers of fortune, framed for a crime they didn't commit. If you have a problem, if no one else can help, maybe you can hire the Bad Batch.
Wait, the Bad Batch is just the A-Team in space?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Hey, thanks again, Scentbird, for your sponsorship of this video. Check out their links below. And guys, we want to hear from you. What do you think of all this? Let me know in the comments or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.